and welcome to This Is. Let's customize our hate emails today.
So, if you're unfamiliar, there's a small company called Framework, and their pitch is a noble one. Create customizable laptops much the same way that you would customize your desktop PC. Now, this is a very famous company, largely because one, Linus Sebastian Tech Tips has invested and heavily promoted the company. Now, I did a video on this Framework 13 last year. And if I were to put it lightly, that is one of the most amount of grumpy town comments and emails I've gotten in a very long time. There's a lot to talk about here, but the big thing is that Framework have just released a whole slew of new products.
I am very torn on the Framework, but I definitely am torn one way.
How do you get torn one way? That just feels like you have one.
Torn means.
Look, I like the idea of the Framework.
I think everyone likes the idea of Framework.
But my ends there. So, like,
I think it's a good idea. It's
well, I did
okay.
look,
Have you actually spent any time with this laptop? Because I did daily drive it for a while.
no, I haven't because
Okay.
it never at any point
Yeah.
when the company came out and they said like here's what we want to do, it appealed to me then. Ever since they've launched any of their products,
Yeah.
none of them have appealed to me for
Okay.
a lot of reasons.
Sure, that's
And-
totally valid. That's
yeah,
totally
so
valid.
I have never even been tempted to try one.
So before we get into laptops, which I think is a little bit more of a thorny conversation, let's talk about their desktop. So they have, for the first time, a Framework modular desktop, which seems like a great idea until you remember the desktops have always been modular, and that's like not necessarily
And
a new thing.
this is where Matt gets angered.
Okay, anger. Go ahead, get angry.
Because it's not a modular desktop. Yeah, I don't think you know what that word means.
So what you get with the Framework desktop is a Ryzen AI Max chip. Now, this is a very powerful chip that can have either 8 or 16 cores of CPU power.
Sure.
You got a not an insubstantial GPU. Like you're talking about, especially when you go up to the 395, you're talking about like 40, 60, 40, 70 level performance, like a very, very powerful. Think about
Right.
like a super powerful console APU. And one of the reasons why this thing is pretty hyped is that it's all unified memory, much like, when you get like Apple Silicon or something, which means that you can outfit this with up to 128 gigs of RAM. And you can allocate almost all of that to the GPUs, like
That's
96
awesome.
gigs or something.
That is
if you're on Windows.
fantastic.
Yeah, so essentially, if you want to run like huge AI models or something on your device, this is one of the best chips that you can possibly get for that because you can give it tons and tons and tons of memory. But there's a downside. If you're buying this chip, no matter if you're getting it on a laptop or now on a desktop, it is a mobile chip, which means that it is meant to be soldered onto the motherboard. So even though you're buying a desktop, you cannot change this chip. It is built into the motherboard. And you also have to have the memory soldered on as well, which is a big no-no for the desktop being less flexible than a laptop.
The things that make a desktop modular, the Framework comes out, they're like, you know what? We want to make laptops more like desktops. Oh, we gotta shake up the industry. We gotta be different. Let's just make it a laptop. Like they just hit the inverse button on both of these. They're like, oh, you can customize it, but you really can't.
Well, okay. So
They never said modular. I'll
Yeah.
just put that out there. The desktop, the entire product description page does not say modular.
Okay, so we'll blame that one for Austin Evans. Their whole pitch as a company is modularity. So it no matter what, it feels
Sure.
weird to have a product like this.
Fair.
But anyway.
So what you get here is essentially it's an ITX motherboard. So theoretically, that motherboard could be swapped out. And what you've got is a very, very powerful chip. But ultimately, it is, I think, Kenzie, you put it best. It's like the laptopification of the desktop. I like this product. I'm actually excited to spend some time with it because to me, this is kind of the future of the desktop in many ways.
Wait, no. Can you repeat that?
This is the future of the desktop in many respects.
Which Matt had said
Yes, you've said this before.
years ago.
I'm not disagreeing
And
with
you're
you.
like, no.
I don't think that's actually what I said. 20 years ago, your desktop probably had a modem, and it had a Wi-Fi card, and it had a sound card. But as time has gone on, these have been all integrated into your motherboard, and more has been integrated into your CPU or your APU or your SoC, whatever you want to call it. Now, with the Framework, it is essentially one step farther because essentially what you can customize with this is the SSD. You can swap out some ports. The front has this neat little thing where you can like 3D print little like dingle dongers and put them on front or whatever you want to do. But ultimately, this is a less customizable desktop than something you go down to your local Micro Center and build yourself. Now, there are advantages to that. There's a reason why everyone's pushing this direction. For example, I know specifically for the Framework desktop, they actually did talk to AMD and they did want to actually make modular memory. However, because of the way that the chip was actually designed and like signal and speed and reliability, basically they couldn't really engineer it in a way that actually has swappable memory, which means that you have to buy it already soldered onto the motherboard, which is less than ideal, but this is a little bit of a more unique product, right? Like this is not a normal kind of desktop. Like you're buying this because you want a tiny system that's very powerful that you're probably going to be wanting to run your Llama models on or something like that.
I want to point out though, Apple got absolutely flamed when they started doing this. And it's just like, yeah, they're killing customization. They just want to make it so you can't upgrade your stuff. The trade-offs, what you got with that was memory that was significantly faster. Do you remember when like their SSD came out that was like 7 gigs a second?
Yeah, Apple, they brought out pretty fast SSDs early. Yeah, of course.
And like they basically said like, hey, in order to give you these blazing fast speeds, we have to do this. Then we see a product like this, and everyone's like, yo, this is great. It's giving us all this customization. Look, it's the same thing. It's the same argument.
To me, this feels like where the space is moving. I'm not telling you that 5 years from now it will be impossible to build a desktop. What I am saying is that this framework, I think, is going to age relatively well, and you're going to be looking at PCs that are going to look a lot more like consoles. Like, I'm actually a pretty big fan of what they're doing with this. I understand the compromise that they've made.
I'm not opposed to the desktop itself.
Yeah.
And I've been saying the same thing. I've been saying like the big PC that you know and love right now is on its way out.
Sure.
But when your whole company is built on, we want you to be able to replace every part of this system, and then to come out with this part, with this product, which is the exact opposite of that philosophy, just feels weird.
I think the area that got me in a lot more hot water was talking about the laptop. I had a great time when I was customizing my orange bezel and everything on this laptop and my ports and stuff. It's cool, but if I was to summarize what I said in my video from last year, this device cost me $1,400 or something, and the spec that I got was a fraction of what I could have gotten if I would have not picked a modular device. So let me be a little bit more specific on that. This device has a Ryzen 5 processor. I outfitted it with 16 gigs of RAM. I think I got like a 1 terabyte SSD. Like, it was a moderate spec. And the problem with the device is that if you wanted to get a similar spec of laptop, you could go and easily spend half as much money and go down to your local Best Buy and have a laptop that has everything with it. Second of all, Framework's a small company. They're not getting the massive volume discounts that an HP or an Asus or a Lenovo are getting, which means that you are kind of footing the bill for that modularity. Now, I understand that when you foot the bill for the modularity, you're getting this chassis, which I can swap out. In fact, that is literally one of the things they announced, is that if you have a 13-inch laptop, you can now buy the latest AMD Ryzen AI processors. But I still have a concern about how expensive this stuff is. It's a compromised device. And I see people try to make with a straight face the argument that these are good values, and they are not good values. I understand that there are advantages to this, but if you just look at it from the I'm an end user, I want to buy a laptop, you could buy one of these things for $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, and then a few years from now, spend another $500, $600 upgrading it, at which point you spent $2,000. There's nothing about these that are particularly better than a mainstream competition, unless you're talking about stuff like being able to swap the ports and the idea of the modularity. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here because no one's listening to me.
It's because they are all people who watch Linus. Like, the target
Linus's fault.
market for this is people who watch Linus Tech Tips and adjacent channels.
You guys, like the people who put this thing on a pedestal, this is not the savior of the laptop space that you claim it to be. Oh, it's like, yeah, I can upgrade all these things, but the trade-offs on all of these are so, like, they might not look crazy when you're laying them out one by one, but when you add up, there's not besides the I can upgrade it, which is a very broad term, by the way. Like, when a new CPU comes out, you're upgrading the entire motherboard for that.
True, which is like $450, $700, $900.
40% of the board, like of the cost of it.
Yeah, it is a lot.
The batteries they ship with are tiny.
Well,
they're like in comparison to other devices.
With the 13-inch, you're getting like a 62 watt-hour battery, but I will say a lot of thinner, smaller devices have like 70 watt-hour batteries at this point. So
when you're talking about like, oh, I'm gonna keep this thing for 10 years. your battery at the end of a 10
You're buying a new
years,
battery.
Yeah, you can upgrade all these things, but by the time you do that,
Yeah.
you're paying for a new laptop.
So here, I've got the examples right here, right? So for the Framework Laptop 13, which is the one that I have, if I want to upgrade things, so they have knocked the prices down on, say, like the original Core Ultra series. So it's now $400 if I want to upgrade with that, or $1,000 if I want an AI 9. Yikes, that's a lot.
I want to talk about the port selection. When Apple came out and said, here's the MacBook Pro, it's got 4 Thunderbolt ports, people are like, they took away our ports. You get more ports on a 14-inch MacBook Pro than you do on a Framework.
So for example, with this device, I put 2 USB-C ports, a USB-A, and an SD card reader. But I could have put an Ethernet, I could put an HDMI, could put a display port. You can even use these as like little external like SSDs, or I guess internal SSDs. I agree with you on like in principle, like, you know, you could pick out like a MacBook, whatever. MacBooks do have more ports, right? You're gonna get like 3 Thunderbolt ports, you're getting a MagSafe, SD card reader, HDMI. You're getting more ports. I agree with that.
You get more Thunderbolt ports, which can be any of those
Well,
ports.
I mean, to be fair, these are, you can put USB-C.
Sure.
or
No,
USB
you
4,
can't.
You could put USB 4 on this.
It is, yeah, like the cheapest one I think is $20. Like an Ethernet is like $50. You know what costs $20? A Thunder, like a USB-C dongle that has all of those ports. Let's talk about the modularity.
Okay,
the
let's do it.
customization.
Sure.
I think this looks terrible.
Hey, I built this one. I picked orange. I like orange.
You get more
I like
customization
orange.
by just going and getting like a D brand skin or like it's like
Well, you know what? To give you a little bit of credit here, it would be great for me to be able to actually have like a completely different like deck lid that's not this ugly silver
it's
like just generic town.
A transparent thing is cool,
Give me like a modular keyboard.
but it doesn't
I can, like,
match the rest of it.
No one else has this though, right? Like no one else gives
like,
you this level of customization.
But like that's such a low bar when you're looking at it. No one gives you that much customization, but it looks like shit. Like where I am gonna give credit is the 16-inch model.
Yeah,
being
you do.
able to customize the actual layout of where the keyboard is, and like part of this is the parts that you can get aren't that good. It's not an OLED screen. It's
It is 3x2. But you have a good point. So if you think about, so they just brought out these new AMD Ryzen AI processors. So this is shipping, or at least they're announcing it in February. I think they're shipping it in April, I think. This is a processor that I think launched June of last year. I know people were kind of like giving me like crap about it because I was like complaining about how long it takes. But like, I don't know, I feel like if you're an enthusiast, you probably don't want to wait 9 months for the new processor to come out. Yeah, I don't really understand that.
I also want to I want to be clear. Like a lot of my complaints, I actually don't blame Framework themselves for.
Yeah.
As much as I'm complaining about like this looks bad with the way you customize, there's zero way that Framework could make that customization without it being even more ludicrously expensive. Project Aura failed for this exact reason.
And that was the modular phone that Google were trying to bring out.
And that's with Google, who has just unlimited money. If they can't make this work.
That was a phone, though. I think laptops have always had some level of customization. You know, you've always been able to do stuff. It's only been in the last maybe 10 years or so that more and more components are being soldered down to the point where you got to get your Goo Gone to like scrape the battery out. And one of the advantages of the Framework is that you could say, buy this thing, load up with 8 gigs of RAM, very easily upgrade to 16 gigs later, 32 or whatever you can do. I feel like I come across as really negative about this. I do like what Framework are doing, and I will actually say that they have actually taken some good steps forward with this new generation, because not only do they have the updates to the 13 and the actual desktop, but they also have the brand new 12-inch. And the 12-inch is legitimately a cool little device. Framework essentially has built a smaller 12-inch laptop that is meant to be cheaper than the existing 13, so it's going to be somewhere south of $750. I find as a touchscreen, which friggin' finally. I can't believe they haven't been shipping touchscreens for a while.
I could not care less about a touchscreen in a laptop. Me personally.
Very much touch every screen I see, and if it doesn't work, it's
I hate having fingerprints on the screen.
Well, then don't touch it. But I like touching it. But the 12-inch cool because it actually has cool colors, which honestly, absolutely should be what they have been doing from the start. And importantly, it's not going to be e-waste in a year when the freaking thing collapses, because it's actually built with some sort of durability in mind as well. Now, is it going to still have some of these compromises that we're talking about? Yes. But importantly, it seems like they are really targeting a more reasonable price point. And half of my complaints about Framework have always just been, these things are too damn expensive.
No, I want to go through the list of the compromises and add them all up for you guys. Like, you're buying almost outdated hardware.
So that's kind of my concern.
There's the biggest one there.
Yep.
You have again, the smaller battery, a lower quality screen than a lot of laptops with a non-OLED.
It's okay.
Name one thing besides the upgradability about this that's amazing.
The upgradability.
No, I said besides
upgradability, as well as the customization of changing out your ports and the
But, like,
long-term support that you are going to be able to theoretically buy one of these laptops, spend a little too much money on it, and then 3, 4, 5 years later you can upgrade.
When this came out, everyone thought, like, you know what? If I want to put an OLED in here,
Well, at some point they might offer another screen option, maybe.
but they might. This is my problem with it. They might offer it. They might do this. They might do that. It's not customizable if there's no options to customize.
There are options. They do have multiple screens.
But if you're like, is it an upgrade to go to something that's still older? Right now, like a premium screen is an OLED screen. All right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and you can
like-
get that in a relatively affordable
Right,
laptop.
and
Sure,
that is not an option if your audience is an enthusiast market, and but like I would say that your specs need to start at what is the minimum spec for an enthusiast, like because of the premiums you're paying
Yeah.
to upgrade this laptop. Like say you want to upgrade the CPU to the next generation.
Swap out that motherboard.
You're paying pretty much the cost of a new laptop
Yeah.
to
The cost-
upgrade your laptop.
Yes.
And then you still have an old screen. You still have old RAM. You still have an old battery. Whereas if you just paid, a little bit more, you have a brand new laptop that
It's
is
also going to be thinner and lighter. Yeah. Yes, I think that's the thing, right? The value proposition on these are bad, and everyone who's trying to say, "Well, Mac value is bad too." It's not, honestly.
And I want to talk about that.
Yeah, it's not actually like this is worse than a Mac as far as value goes. Like I
It
like.
is because at least with Mac, you're getting the ecosystem that comes with Mac. You're getting a super sleek system. It's like the engineering that went into open up a MacBook. It is gorgeous in there.
So if I want to outfit a Framework 13, essentially a base model, so Ryzen 5, we've got the base display, 16 gigs of RAM, 500 gig SSD. We're going to include Windows because that's the only fair way of doing it because every other device has it, even though $140 for Windows is a lot. Add all your ports and stuff is $1,282. I will tell you that you can absolutely get an equivalent MacBook for that price or less. And yes, you can make the argument that that MacBook is not going to be able to be upgraded and whatnot, and that's fair. That's totally fine. But this is not as nice of a laptop to use when it comes to the size of the battery, the keyboard, the trackpad, the screen, yada, yada, yada. I get that there is a value proposition in that you buy this thing for $1,300, you're investing in it. And then 3-4 years from now, you maybe sell the motherboard off for another $100, $200, whatever, get a new one in.
I want to bring up you saying you're going to sell it because you need to sell it to someone else who has a framework.
No, to be fair, actually, there is a pretty good community of Framework users who will swap, parts and whatnot. That actually is a real thing. I like the fact that they actually have made some improvements. So I will say that with the 13, they actually have changed some things. So they've improved the keyboard this time, which is one of the things I was not a huge fan of. You also do have faster networking, and they've redesigned the thermals, which again were all complaints I had because this thing was kind of hot, kind of loud. There were some issues with it. So a lot of the things that I was complaining about before, they have upgraded. But the problem is that I think if I was trying to get all of these new bits and bobs, I'm paying a lot of money to try to get these upgrades. And it's just it's just a tough sell. We can sum up this, I think, because it's a big, wide topic. I like the fact that the company are trying to make modularity, customization, repairability first and foremost. That is great. I obviously understand that there are compromises when you do that. You can't make it as thin, you can't fit quite as much stuff in it, yada, yada, yada. I get that. There's totally trade-offs here. The problem that I have with Framework is that I think that they're a very small company. The prices, because of that, they don't get the discounts that the big guys do, which means that they have to pass that off to you. And you just need to be okay with the fact these trade-offs have to be worth it for you and that you're paying a lot of money for a device that is, generally speaking, not quite as nice as the mainstream competition, and that you are investing in this for the long term. That's fine. We all make questionable decisions when it comes to financial things for other reasons. But I just think that people try to pitch Framework as this beautiful, no-brainer, amazing thing, that I'm some lunatic who thinks that I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I just feel like people aren't looking at this objectively enough. if they're making steps in the right direction. And maybe 2-3 years from now, Framework have gotten these prices more under control. They've got the crazy cool upgrades where it's not just a generic silver laptop with a bad keyboard and bad cooling, and like it's actually they've sort of caught up in a bunch of ways. Maybe this thing will be badass then.
I remember seeing a comment that angered me to my core. If Framework can do this, that's proof that all the other big companies can do this. And it's like if that happens, think about how expensive every laptop would be. Like the consumer market is gone.
Well, that's not bad, but there's definitely, I think, an argument to be said that at what point Framework really takes off is when one of the big guys copy them. And when they copy them, they're probably going to copy them and cut several $100s off the price and probably have a sleeker design and whatnot. But I'm very curious. What do you think about Framework? Do you think it's worth it? Do you think that we're absolutely, completely missing the point here? I would love to hear your very reasonable feedback on why you think Framework is good or bad in the comments below.
Here's my email right here.
Do not, no, it's bad. That's, don't send the hate mail there.
Everyone who emails that gets a picture of Austin's feet. So like, follow, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.